Wait a minute.
Lynn, don't shoot me. I'm just a
Okay,
guitar player.
Tom, okay, go ahead. Start. All right, Tom, kick off.
We rolling? Hello and welcome to Bill of Rights Day 2019 at the Lane Center for Learning here in historic Lexington, Massachusetts for Camp Constitution. I'm Tom Moore. I'm an instructor there. Director Shirtliff, Hal Shirtliff, is behind the camera. We're so very fortunate to have this wonderful new learning center and in the spacious living room filled with all these wonderful books, and here in historic Lexington. Wow, 2019 as we record this, America is at a crossroads now. Every street, every city and town in America has a Lexington Avenue. New York probably has the biggest one. There's one everywhere, and that used to mean something. What does it mean today? Not just historically, what does it mean in terms of spirit, in terms of the spirit of America? What does it mean even here in Lexington? Hal and I have done a number of wonderful historical events here, and one year that we did it was the year that, actually it was the year of the marathon bombing. We had an event here, and I went to apply that week to exercise our First Amendment as patriots on Lexington Green, which we had done in 2009 before, respectfully, to consecrate the green, and we were denied that. And the Lexington selectmen, they said that they hadn't figured out who did the Boston Marathon bombing. The Lexington selectman pointed his finger at us and said, "I think when this all unfolds that it would be you guys that did it, the historical community." So that's where we stand today, and we at Camp Constitution, we're trying to get our history back, to really get the spirit back of America where it's missing. It's missing in our schools. We see now, perhaps we have a chance now, we have a chance at the national level. We have a president who I believe is a patriot, and we have to turn that around, and I think this is sort of like the Alamo, if you will, of Lexington. I see that here. I see it. This is like where we plant the flag and we say, you know, there are some traditions in this town that have to stand.
But we gotta win. We're not gonna lose.
And for those that don't know, campconstitution.net, we pray that you are able to come to our camp. It's so inexpensive because most of us volunteer. Yes, right here. So campconstitution.net, it's ridiculously expensive. It's 1 week every summer. This year we're back in the live free or die state of New Hampshire, and I wore my New Hampshire tie. I'm descended from a New Hampshire Patriot as well as a Massachusetts one. But anyway, I'm going to keep it brief. I said I'd keep it brief. Lincoln spoke for 2 minutes at Gettysburg. The other guy spoke for 2 hours. Who knows what he said? But so I wrote a little bit of an anthem for our camp. And it's not done yet, but here's what I got. CampConstitution.net, it's a place you won't forget. We teach the past, prepare the future for patriots and patriots. There's a difference. Constitution, we don't forget the past, all the good things that were meant to last. To liberty, we say huzzah! Freedom, we say huzzah! The Bill of Rights, signed today, we say huzzah! 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 Come to Camp Constitution, campconstitution.net, and with that I will introduce a much more eloquent speaker, Miss Catherine White. Thank you. And what a wonderful space back there.
Marvelous, just marvelous. There. How many dollars is
Do you want to get a royalty for that song? $1 for every time it's...
A dollar to make me sing solo. Solo, you can't hear me.
But chop. Right? Okay, well, thanks everybody for coming out on this great and drizzly day, but we're here for the Bill of Rights, which is always a reason to celebrate. It's an amazing document. I mean, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. Constitution's amazing, and when it was sent out to the states for ratification, of course, they wanted further declarative and restrictive clauses to make sure that the federal government would not outgrow its limits. So everything in the Bill of Rights is a further limitation on the actions of the federal government. So the Declaration of Independence set forth the principles that the Constitution, it's really hard. You take principles and you try to make a working government out of principles. How do you do that? That's what the Constitution was designed for. Right? You take, make something that's going to work, that's going to be powerful enough to work, and yet not powerful enough to infringe on the rights of the people. So our rights, as the Declaration states, they're an inherent, built-in gift from God. And the proper function of government is to protect and secure and hold inviolate the rights that were given to the people by God. If that's the proper function of government, then any other function that government takes on is not legitimate. Any other function. But it's the duty of the people to be the watchdogs. Because if we fall asleep, I'm getting another song.
That wasn't supposed to happen.
That's okay. It's the duty of the people to be watchdogs, because if the people don't pay attention, the government can waltz in and usurp power, and we'll never know until it's too late. So here's that preamble to the Bill of Rights. The conventions of a number of the states, having at the time of their adopting the Constitution, expressed a desire in order to prevent misconstruction or abuse of its powers, that further declaratory and restrictive clauses should be added. Now, that's the kind of plain speaking that can only be misunderstood by people with advanced degrees in English or law.
First time I've ever heard someone teach that the Bill of Rights has its own separate preamble, which declares it to be the most powerful part of the Constitution.
All right. So the purpose, again, is to restrict the power of the federal government so it doesn't encroach on the rights of the people. Now, all rights are based on property, starting with the first piece of property you own as of the day you're born, which is your own body. Because if you do not have the authority and control over what happens to your body, you are a slave. And it is that essential and that central. Property rights are human rights. If you don't protect private property, you are endorsing slavery. All right. Note also that out of the 10 commandments, 5 of them address property rights, tangible and intangible, right? Thou shalt not commit murder is protecting the tangible property of your life and your body. But thou shalt not bear false witness, that's intangible property, that's your reputation, right? So, 5 of the 10 commandments address property rights. Please note that they were very concerned about government outgrowing the limits placed on it. There's a built-in mistrust of government, and a very good thing to have is a mistrust of government. They also address specific issues that were listed in the Declaration of Independence, things that were missing from the actual text of the Constitution, and failures in the Articles of Confederation. So, First Amendment, Congress shall make no law. Michael Bednar, who is the 2004 Libertarian Party candidate for president, always says it's really a shame that they just didn't put a period right there after the word law and be done. But that level of wisdom was not granted. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So Congress is at the federal level, right? This is what we're talking about. Bill of Rights, U.S. Constitution, federal level of government. So they're talking about the House of Representatives and the Senate. They're not talking about the states here. Every state in 1789 had a state religion. What they were prohibiting was the federal government coming in and setting up a national religion. And that was why most of the colonies were set up, was to escape the Church of England Anglican religion and be able to have their own faith freely expressed. Now, an established religion, and you can see it by Church of England practices, it was mandated, backed by the government, supported by taxes. So you pay your tithe to the government, which then supports the church, and with what's left, you can then support your own church, right? So supported by taxes, backed by the government, mandatory attendance. Church of England, even if you belonged to another faith, you had to attend an Anglican service at least once a month. Required. Or they showed up at your door saying, why weren't you there? Oh, you've been sick in bed for 3 months. Okay, we'll let it slide this time. Mandatory attendance. And you had to be a member of that church to vote or to hold public office. This is what the First Amendment was prohibiting. Okay? And what is the free exercise of religion? Is it just where you get to go and sing songs on Sunday mornings or Saturday nights or Fridays or Wednesdays or whatever day you want? No. In theory and in best practices, whatever faith you hold informs all your actions. And Congress is prohibited from stopping you. So, it's protection of free speech. Yeah, Tom.
Very quickly, that's a wonderful point that you just mentioned that probably should be mentioned from the start, is that the whole Bill of Rights is not addressed to us from the government. It is us addressing the government, telling it what lines it's not to cross. We're the ones that are speaking. We're not being spoken to. We're not being granted any rights.
Absolutely, and for that, go back to the preamble to the Constitution and see who's acting. It's the people in the states acting. The federal government doesn't exist yet. It's created by the Constitution. And since the people in the states create the federal government through the Constitution, they're the ones in charge. If I hire you to do a job, you're my employee, and I tell you what job you're going to do. You don't come waltzing in and start telling me how to run my business, unless I've hired you as a consultant to improve the business, right? But if I hired you to sweep the floors, you don't come waltzing in and tell me what I need to do in marketing, or you're going to be out on the street looking for a new job really quickly. That's the piece that we've not been good at, is spanking our recalcitrant employee and telling it, do the job you were hired to do, nothing more and nothing less. Okay, so protection of free speech. So if I'm going to say today is gray and drizzly and rainy and kind of miserable out there, does that need to be protected? No. Who's going to be offended? Who's going to disagree? Well, you could disagree with me. You can say, I love rainy days. I splash in the puddles. But that doesn't need protection, right? The speech that needs protection is speech that is going to offend somebody, speech that people are going to disagree with, speech of political action. What is not protected is what's called fighting words, right? Incitement, right? It's like, well, come on, yeah, you just want to hit me. Right? And egging someone on to hit you, that is incitement. That's not protected because it's looking for violence. Or, if I, on the other hand, said, I'm going to kill you, and I'm not joking about it, but I'm really, it's like, I'm going to come and I'm going to find you, and I am going to, right? That's not protected because technically that's assault. Right? So if you're inciting violence or if you're committing verbal assault, that is not protected. But saying, I think the climate change emergency is a lot of hokum built on false science, that is protected speech. If you want to turn around and say, no, it was all right, and there really is a climate emergency and we need to act, that is protected speech. And we can argue about it, we can agree not to agree, but both of those pieces of speech are protected. Commercial speech, does money equal speech? And you can make arguments both ways. My personal feeling is that money does not equal speech, but we can have a discussion about it at some point. Obscene speech is not thoroughly defined in a lot of ways, but it is not necessarily protected when done publicly, right? Because obscene speech, you're infringing on the rights of people who are really upset by it, or children from being exposed to things that they shouldn't be exposed to. So we've got a few gray areas here, right? Free speech in 1789 was disseminated by people standing on a soapbox in the public square, or by printing pamphlets and handing out leaflets, printing articles in newspapers. And a free press, think about what actually makes a free press. Does having every news outlet in the country be owned by 6 interrelated companies, is that a free press? All right, so what kind of assembly is protected? The right of the people peaceably to assemble. Peaceably being the operative word here. So the Antifa type protests where they're blocking traffic and rioting and destroying property, those are not protected assemblies. The types that is protected is public assembly, if you've got people standing with signs and trying to talk to folks going by, handing out information cards, not impeding traffic, not getting into incitement or altercations with passersby, not blocking roads, not throwing things. That is not protected. That is not peaceably assembling. There's a protection of the right to petition the government if something's gone wrong. And again, if everything in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, is looking at protecting property, is your faith and are your opinions part of your intellectual property? All right, so they're protected. The Second Amendment. Woo-hoo. A well-regulated militia being necessary, not optional, necessary, to the security of a free state, not nation, state, the right of the people, to keep and bear, not locked in a box, bear arms, shall not be infringed. Not. N-O-T, as in no. So, in 1789, did to regulate mean to micromanage? No. It meant to put in good order. It meant to make sure things were, there was a set principles that were understood. It meant to train, right, to regulate. And the militia, and this again, these are both from Webster's Dictionary, the 1828 edition. The militia of a country are the able-bodied men organized into companies, regiments, and brigades with officers of all grades and required by law to attend military exercises on certain days only, but at other times left to pursue their usual occupations. everybody. A militia is necessary to keep a state free and secure because the people who live there have a vested interest in protecting themselves, their families, their own property, their neighbors, their towns, and their communities. A professional army that draws its members from all over does not have that same local investment. And it's the right of the people. Now, the soldiers in the Revolutionary War actually had better arms than the soldiers in the British regulars. Because the British regulars, they were equipped by government contract, right? So they got muskets. Our people, since they bought their own arms, they, for the most part, had rifles that were much more accurate, that made, the British way of fighting, or the way of fighting at that time, was you formed squares, and the people in front fired, knelt down to reload, right? Because the people behind them fired over their heads, dropped down to reload, and you just tried to send as much lead that way as you could in the hopes that it hit something. Because muskets are not very accurate. With a rifle, with the rifling, you get stability of the bullet and it goes where it's supposed to go. So we could fight a more guerrilla-style warfare, one shot from behind a tree, and with a good, much better likelihood you're going to hit something, right? So we actually had better rifles than the muskets of the British. Most of the artillery that was used in the Revolutionary War was privately owned by the people or the towns. Sometimes a town would take tax money to buy an artillery piece. It was privately owned artillery. The power that Congress has over the state militias is that they can prescribe a training regimen, but the states have control over all the officers. So again, it's state control, because we might need to use that militia against the federal government. We just fought a war against a huge, powerful central government. They weren't going to do anything that was going to put them back in the same boat, at disadvantage. So, shall implies a promise, command, or determination, and implies an authority to enforce the act. So, shall not means a promise, command, or determination not to do something, right? And this has nothing to do with hunting. It has very little to do with self-defense, actually. This is so that the citizens, if ever needful, could once again fight a tyrannical government with a hope of winning. So, if the state you're a citizen of is part of your property, right? You have an ownership stake in the state because you're a taxpayer and it's where you live, then it's also your responsibility to protect it. So is any state or federal gun law enforceable under the Constitution? Actually, no. They are all the federal gun laws are unconstitutional from the get-go, and most of the state laws are, because Article 6 of the Constitution says that this Constitution shall be the supreme law of the land, and there's that shall again, right? Command. No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. Again, we have protection of private property. The quartered soldiers, you didn't get a choice. They came in, they took your stuff, they broke your stuff, they stole your daughter, you know, they killed your best pig for lunch, you know. This was to protection of property, right? Amendment 4, the right of the people, again the people, to be secure, held inviolate, in their persons, your first piece of property, their houses, more property, papers, more property, and effects, more property. Against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Now this probable cause, oath or affirmation, you have to go to a judge and say, this is what we think is going on. This is the evidence we have to date to support it. We think there's going to be more support if we get his notebook, if we get his journal, if we get, you have to have something specific, and it has to be sworn to by somebody. And if it turns out that they're out on a vendetta, you have the name of a person to sue. That's part of the redress of grievances, right? You get to sue. Tangible and intellectual property are both protected here. This principle will now apply equally to modern types of property, such as email and phone records, social media posts, documents on your computer. They have to say specifically, we are looking for X. We think it's on this computer or this tablet. And if they say it's on this computer or this tablet, that doesn't give them the right to just go on a general fishing expedition looking through your dresser drawers.
Mhm.
All right. Amendment 5. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arriving in the land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. There's a lot packed in here. They were really, really fond of run-on sentences. So taking the fifth and the Miranda warning come from this. But these aren't really the most important parts of this amendment. So if there's a case that will put you in danger of life or limb, it has to be a grand jury, right, which is a higher level jury. It has to be a serious crime. Military and militia cases, they don't go unpunished, but they come under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So they got their whole other court system, which actually gets administered under the executive branch, because the military is under the executive control. Double jeopardy and self-incrimination are prohibited. Now, these were tools frequently used by the Crown to ruin political enemies, because if we can just keep hauling you into court on the same stupid, made-up charges time and time and time again, eventually you'll go bankrupt and you'll be so busy trying to just keep yourself fed that you're not going to be able to cause trouble anymore, are you? So, they get one chance. If you're acquitted, they cannot bring you up on those same charges again. That doesn't mean if you get acquitted for murdering somebody, that they can't then charge you for murdering somebody else. It just means that they proved you didn't, it could not be proved that you murdered this person, so they can't put you on trial for murdering this person another time. And they can't force you to testify against yourself. Again, techniques of the Crown. Due process of law is a very specific set of requirements that are mainly dealt with in a later amendment, so we'll talk about them more there. But due process of law is very important to make sure that people get fairness in the court system. Now, just compensation, that's a little hard to be determined, and that's a place where we can have discussions, right? The powers of a jury, the judges want you to think that the jury is just does what it's told, but juries actually have an amazing amount of power. They can decide that the law does not apply in this case. They can decide that the law is being applied unfairly. They can decide that the facts are insufficient to prove. They can decide all kinds of things. And judges don't want you to know. The Fully Informed Jury Association has all kinds of wonderful information. And did you know that there are 3 types of court systems? Not even including the military courts. There's courts of law, courts of equity, and common law courts. It's actually very difficult in this country now to find a common law court. They're all either law or equity. So we can talk about the circumstances that justify taking private property for public use. And again, we have to go back to the Third Amendment and this protection of property. Increasing the property tax base is not a good reason to take somebody's private property. For public safety, to make an intersection that's, that usually gets accidents, and you need more space to make a turning lane, there you might have a reason to take private property for public use. Could you need that property because you need a defensive installation? There's another place. Just to make a better trading area, maybe not so much. So this, again, there's places for discussion of what is an appropriate use. But you've got a high bar because you're depriving someone of their property. So you've got a high bar to reach to take it. And you should put a lot of emphasis on other options, alternate locations. And I would posit that all asset forfeiture laws are not constitutional. Especially when you have like property asset forfeiture, if somebody's dealing drugs in your house, except that you're also not allowed to ask somebody if they're a drug dealer before you have to rent an apartment to them, nor can you evict them easily if you find out that they're doing. So this is asking for the government to just come in and take your property for their benefit without you being compensated at all. Asset forfeiture is absolutely anathema to our system. Sixth Amendment, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. This is most of what constitutes due process. And if you compare this to what's been going on in the House recently, you will see the incredible differences between what actual due process is and the kabuki theater that's been going on for partisan purposes in vermin-ridden DC in the last month or so.
You get to face your accuser / whistleblower.
Mm-hmm.
Or not.
So, impartial jury, right? We can all agree to that. Speedy and public trial. Again, this was what was used by the king. They'd have a trial that would be delayed years, and the trial would be held in England. What are you going to do with your farm? What are you going to do with your business? What are you going to do with your family if you have to go to England and maybe cool your heels for 3 years, waiting for a trial? This is, again, another way to ruin someone financially, to make them powerless to object to anything you're doing. You have to be told what you're being accused of. You are being accused of
Bribery.
Extortion, serial bad parking. Right? Whatever, doesn't matter. You have to be told what the crime is, what laws it's supposed to have broken. You have to be able to talk to the people who are accusing you. I saw you park badly. You were 3 feet from the curb and then you walked away from your car. You're guilty. Right? But then you have to be able to provide witnesses for your defense. It's like, no, I was there too. He parked 3 inches from the curb. He did a beautiful job. I was admiring the job he did. Right? You have to be able to defend yourself. You have to have the ability to have someone who specializes in law advise you. You have to be able to have the evidence presented and know about the stuff that exonerates you as well as the stuff that accuses you. You can't take the photographs that show a car too far out from the curb being presented while somebody has hidden the pictures showing that the car is actually close to the curb and the ones of the car far away were actually not your car at all. Right? You have to have all of it. So there's due process of law, and there's a few other pieces of that as well. But there's an absolute procedure that has to be followed. We've already talked about all of these. Seventh Amendment, and in suits at common law where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law. $20 was actually a substantial fraction of the average annual wage in 1789.
Does gold basically hold its value over time? So
It does.
This is a $20 gold piece in my tie, and it's worth about $1,500 now.
Yeah.
So that's what they're talking about.
Yeah, they're talking, $1,500 to $2,000. One $20 gold piece 120 years ago would buy a man's bespoke custom-made suit. 1 ounce of gold today will buy a man's custom-made suit. So in some ways, the value of gold holds extremely steady, and it's the value of the currency and the devaluation of it that causes the price of gold to fluctuate.
So $20, that's a gold piece.
Yeah, it's a gold
That's
piece.
what it was, yeah.
Yeah,
And it held its value really steady until the Federal Reserve, basically.
until the Federal Reserve and until the devaluation of the money. So, and again, this is a substantial fraction of the annual income of somebody, right? So today, somewhere between $2,000 and $10,000, roughly, right? You have to be able, at those levels, to ask for a trial by jury. That's preserved, okay? So now we get a little bit into the difference between courts of law, courts of equity, and common law courts. If you've got something that's black and white, jaywalking, bad parking, bribery, extortion, embezzlement, where there's a statute, a law against it, that's a court of law. If you're talking about fairness, right? Who gets custody of the dog, and how are we going to split up the retirement accounts when a couple's divorcing? There's 2 heirs fighting over grandpa's record collection. Those are courts of equity or fairness. What's going to be the best solution, for the dog and for the people fighting over custody of the dog? Who's going to do better to, who has the better claim to grandpa's record collection? Stuff like that. So in a court of equity, you don't get a jury, because it's a balancing act, right? If you've got a statute, a law that has supposedly been broken, then you get jury trial. Hello, we're here, you're not. Common law depends greatly on precedent and long-standing tradition.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Okay. I'll talk to you later, whoever you are. All right. So no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined. What this means is that the judge doesn't have power to overturn the jury's decision. Okay? And juries have way more power than they think they have.
Right.
Amendment A, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted.
Like
Bail.
having to listen to Greta Thunberg.
That would be a cruel and
Cruel, unusual
Yeah,
punishment.
how
dare you!
that poor abused girl.
She's abused
Yeah.
by her parents,
She's
yeah.
really-
It's disgusting what they're doing to her. So bail is money that you pay to the court system as an earnest that you'll show back up for your trial. So that you can, go get the crops in, or continue your business while you're waiting for your trial to come up, right? We have it, if you just let somebody go and hope that they show up, chances are they're not gonna show up again, right? So it protects the court system, it protects the interest of the people whose laws have been broken. And at some level, it also protects the person who's paying the bail, because that means they get to go home and continue their business while they're waiting, right? They're not there in limbo, unable to do anything while their crops rot in the fields, or while their store is shuttered up and they're making no money. Bail is not required in every case. And if it's a case of somebody who's a danger, or somebody who's a serious flight risk, right, you don't have to give bail. Excessive bail is not defined. So we have to kind of have a discussion about what the bar is and what's reasonable in what circumstances. I would say that if you're a serial bad parker, right, and the hearing is going to be on whether or not to revoke your driver's license, or at least your parking license, the standard for what bail is required is going to be an awful lot lower than if you're here on a student visa with a passport to go back to the Maldives, where we don't have extradition, and you're accused of murder. Maybe that's a case where you don't get bail at all. Right? So we have, again, room for discussion. If it's a more serious crime, what's the level of damage, what's the level of harm to society if this person's out free while we're waiting to see if they're guilty of a crime. And cruel and unusual punishments. What was considered unusual back in 1789? What was considered cruel? Drawing and quartering, that was definitely considered cruel.
The rack.
The rack, forms of torture. Were stocks and pillory considered cruel or unusual in those days? No, they were actually still pretty common. Would hanging or execution by firing squad be considered cruel or unusual? They have a high standard of proof, but they're not cruel or unusual. Would Sheriff Arpaio's pink jumpsuits have been considered cruel?
In those days, probably. I'm kidding.
So cruel and unusual doesn't mean you can't have unpleasant, right? That's part of the reason of punishment, is that if you're going to be embarrassed to be seen in a pink jumpsuit, you're going to think real hard about doing something that's going to send you back for more pink jumpsuit time, right? I'd rather leave an honest life than wear that jumpsuit again, right? This is a good thing, right? Ninth Amendment, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. We listed a bunch of them. We didn't list them all. Just because we didn't list them doesn't mean they're not there. Doesn't mean you can invent new ones, right? But the rights, additional rights, would never include anything that harms others. Right? There is also no right to redefine marriage, biology, or consent.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
All right. Then we have other issues that flow from this, right? When, where, and how do we protect the personal rights of the tiny minority who may consider themselves, gay or gender fluid or whatever odd little things they're coming up with these days? And that's, you always protect the rights of the individual. That does not equate with forcing their opinions on others. There's the right of an adult to choose the course of their own life. And then you can cross a line into where that person constitutes a danger either to themselves or to other people. And we have to be cognizant of where that line might be. And, does it protect a person's rights to life, liberty, property, pursuing happiness, to support their delusion? If somebody really thinks, and is absolutely convinced that they're a fried egg, the right answer is not to lay them out on a piece of toast and start carving into them. right? They need help. And it doesn't involve toast, cheese, and scissors, and knife, fork, right? So there's lines, but we have to keep in mind that, again, if somebody really wants to believe that they're a fried egg, and they're not insisting that you take part by slicing into them as they lay on a piece of toast, they can go around with salt and pepper shakers, douse themselves on occasion, and we can feel sorry for them and recommend that they get help, but they can't force us to be part of their delusion. All right, 10th Amendment, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, which are almost all listed in Article 1, Section 8. There's a few others scattered hither and yon. Nor prohibited by it to the states. Those are mostly in Article 1, Section 10, where the states agree that they're not going to have separate treaties, that they're not going to issue their own currency that isn't based on silver or gold, that they're not going to have their own standing armies, that they're not going to give titles of nobility, a few things like that. So, powers not delegated to the states or prohibited by the Constitution to the states are reserved to the states or the people. So, what authority does the federal government have over local education? Constitutionally, none. What authority do they have over energy? None. What authority do they have over health and safety laws and what kind of ladder you need to use? None. Most of the federal agencies are completely without constitutional support and are a usurpation of power not granted.
Abolish them.
Yeah, abolish them.
That's right.
Save an awful lot of money. Somebody did a calculation once and said that the constitutional powers of government could be funded by half the tax money received.
Harry Brown, God rest his soul, said 10% of what we spent.
Well, hold on. That doesn't include the other half that we borrow or print the money for. And it doesn't address 1 penny of waste or duplication. Just the constitutional functions of government. Half the tax that's collected currently. It'd be really nice to have half of what they take away every year, wouldn't it? Put it back. Think of all the good you could do in the world with it. All right. All not surrendered is retained. Right? Madison said if the power was not given, Congress could not exercise it. But Congress does do it, and if we don't know the Constitution and its limits and are asleep at the switch, they get away with it. This was frequently invoked to curtail federal powers until 1937. There was a case in 1941, U.S. versus Darby, which was a fair wage case that kind of tossed it wholesale, which is stupid. And that's kind of the essential problem with the idea of using case law and precedent instead of original intent. If this is the Constitution, and your first decision is here, and your next decision is based on it, and the next is based on that one, and the next is based on that one, after 100 years you're here, where you should be down here. You know, case law is a horrible reason when you're looking at constitutional principles. And the law schools haven't taught constitutional law in 100 years, they teach case law.
Right.
You know, in
That's all
medicine,
they teach at Harvard. That's all they teach. They don't teach the Constitution
they
at all.
don't teach it at all. You know, and in medicine, they call that same principle anecdote, and they dismiss it entirely. Right? So you can go up to them and say, you know, that this happened after this. Oh, that's just anecdote. We pay no attention to anecdote. It has to be scientific studies, and we need to see statistics and all the rest of it. Medicine's tossed out, but in law, it's the basis of everything they do. Now, using case law as precedent in minor things, that can certainly be a lot easier and more reasonable. You know, we have an example of a fair way to divide custody of the family dog. Let's use, you know, this one worked, let's try this, rather than reinventing everything from whole cloth, right? That works. But when you're dealing with constitutional principles, you have to go back to original intent every single time. All right. What powers are delegated to the federal government? They're all in there. What powers are prohibited to the states? They're in there too. Where does the federal government's power to protect other states come in?
Guaranteeing a
We've
republic
got-
form of
we've-
government.
We've got the guarantee of a Republican form of government. We've also got interstate commerce, where you can't impose customs duties on goods coming in from Georgia or Oklahoma, right? So there's a few places for federal involvement, and it's mainly a level playing field. And we can have a discussion over whether or not that level playing field includes protection of air, water, and land that crosses state borders. There's a place for discussion there. But in general, the rule of thumb is, unless the Constitution clearly gives authority, and you can prove it by original intent, back off and think real hard about whether or not you have authority to act. This whole thing about border crossings and land on a river that goes from one place to another. This may actually be a better area for state control up to and including lawsuits. And what court has original jurisdiction? In any case in which a state shall be party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. All right? And what should be the measure for harm? Reality, something measurable, something you can point to. It shouldn't be conjecture. You have to think about what the costs of inaction are if you're saying, this could affect us. Okay? So there's places to discuss. So, any questions on this? No? Then whoever goes next goes next.
Hal, do you want to introduce our next
No,
guest?
Josh can just go up there, yeah.
Well, hello everybody. How y'all doing today?
Good,
Hey,
how
Josh.
you doing?
I'm Josh Moore, and I'm not going to take a massive amount of time. That was very thorough, by the way. I really appreciate it. There's several things that I learned that I hadn't even heard before. I was like, interesting, very good. Always learning. It's excellent. So I appreciate that very much. Very good job. So a little bit of background about myself. I'm not going to give the normal background that I usually do because then it takes several minutes, and I don't want to go through all that. Because we want to commemorate the signing and the ratification of the Bill of Rights and what all that means. And again, we just had a thorough presentation on that. But I am a former state representative for New Hampshire. I served 4 years, 2 terms, 2014 to 2018 and I served my entirety of that time on the House Education Committee. And it was really interesting about that. I didn't have any college education whatsoever, but I had a very deep passion, and still do, for education for this very reason. Because I love the Constitution, I love liberty, I love freedom, I love the Declaration of Independence, and right around the time of 2012, the Thanksgiving of 2012, in the month of December, ironic because this was 7 years later now that we're at, I ended up developing this passion for the Founding Fathers. Right, so I started reading the Declaration of Independence. I read the Constitution over and over every day. I just kept reading and memorizing stuff in it. And then I got into one of my favorite authors, David Barton with Wall Builders, became really my inspiration. He is like, I call him sort of my hero in a way, because I met him several times, and we've had his son come up through our church and do stuff, and I keep telling him, I was like, you guys are awesome, keep doing what you're doing, because of you, outside of God being the foundation in my life, because of what your writings, I took all that and went to the State House with it. And your writings inspired me to do this. So good job. You created a state rep in a way, and they were really glad to hear that. So I won twice, of course, and then I started getting really deep in the idea of the concept of natural law. And what is often referred to, not necessarily today, but more in communities where it's more in depth discussed, natural rights, which is interchangeable with unalienable rights in the Declaration of Independence. And these are rights we were born with, and that's where you get a lot of your rights that are found within the Bill of Rights. You're right, and this is interesting you brought this up, because this one person that I'm very, very excited about, I love their writings, is John Locke. Very, very good man who destroyed the divine right of kings theory. And it's funny because I was actually talking with a college student recently who said that they don't believe in natural rights. And I was like, that doesn't even make any sense. And how do you, what do you have then? What, do you even have rights? And they said, well, yeah, but they're found, they come from God, but they're not really shown in the Bible anywhere. Like, you sound so confusing. I was like, I don't even know where you're going with this, but okay. Let's take it step by step. He didn't like John Locke or anything. But one thing he did say was that I don't think John Locke gave enough credit at all to God. And I said, then you clearly haven't read Locke's treatises on government, because in both of them he cites scripture often, constantly, all over the place. I mean, that's the entire first treatise is entirely based on scripture and using it to destroy the theory of the divine right of kings. So that was kind of interesting. But then I met a philosopher recently, a young man who lives in Kansas City, right? He's 26 now. He started teaching his first college class at 22. He's got his PhD already. Very smart individual, and I had him on the radio yesterday in Nashua, New Hampshire, and we were chatting about a lot of this, and he said, kind of the opposite of what this other young college student said, where he actually says that Locke's writings were in fact, not that they gave God too much credit, right, but it didn't go deep enough into natural law and explaining what natural law is and whatnot. So he felt that it could be more thoroughly explained through natural law, right? The theory of John Locke, what he's talking about with these natural rights. And so this is a lot of stuff that I've been getting into, and a lot of the stuff that I've been diving into for years now. And how do I apply this? And I'm going to go into a little bit more of this information shortly. And like I said, I'm not going to go on too terribly long, but at the end of my second term, which was 2018, so we're almost out of this. It's like crazy how time just flies so fast. Oh, man. Anyway.
It gets worse as you get older.
I'm feeling that right now. I'm 30 and I'm already feeling that. I'm like, what's going on? So the end of 2018 comes, and I felt the need to start a new organization, right? That was to focus primarily on inspiring and empowering the next generation of statesmen to restore culture and government. And one thing that I have found, having served in the State House, this is one of those little practical matters, little thoughts that pop in your head. I'm sitting there, I'm watching lobbyists come in, and lobbyists, depending on what they're fighting for, are great. This is the blanket statements that I find silly when people say, oh, lobbyists are bad. No, lobbyists are good when they're fighting for something righteous and with a foundational standard to go on. That's good. But they would come in and they would say stuff, and I thought, they're not listening to us at all. And half the people aren't listening to them. So no one's really changing anybody's mind. And I'm thinking, you know what? I bet, though, if I had 6 months or a year to sit down with them and reason with them, because Scripture calls us to reason with one another, I said, maybe we could change their mind. I thought, but that requires a shift in their heart. And that's culture. That is not law. Right? I said, so if we can shift culture, the heart, and the mind, we will then shift law, because law is reflective of culture and the heart. I thought, okay, well, that makes total sense. Duh, okay, well, what are we doing here? And I thought, hey, epiphany, here we go. I thought, but then, well, surely there's a lot of smarter people than me out in the world. And, I thought, there definitely are. There's billions of them that are much smarter than me. And why did anybody do this yet? Oh, that's right, because it's really hard. We'd rather pass a law to change somebody's lifestyle or whatever they're doing than to build a relationship and change their heart and mind. So that's what we've done with the Patriot Initiative, and we've been around for about a year, and we've been going around the state of New Hampshire and outside a little bit to talk with citizens all over the place, right? College students primarily. We like to talk to a lot of young people about cultural issues. Now, some people have described us, and we've sort of, in a way, branded ourselves as kind of the localized wall builders, right, through David Barton, but because we talk a lot about history and the Constitution, much of what you've presented earlier, in a slightly different fashion, but it's really excellent information. And we go around, we talk with college students, and we hold public forums on various different cultural topics. The LGBT sexual lifestyle, we talk about climate change, we talk about Second Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, everything, freedom of consciousness, and that's what we do. And what we do is we bring experts in their field, and we relate these questions and responses in what we talk about to the original intent and the founding values of America. So it's sort of an informational session, if you will. Then what we also do is we offer our constitutional leadership training. Just got these printed, so I'm kind of happy. And it's a 3-hour training that preps you as a statesman. It's sort of our introductory training to prep you to be a statesman for restoring culture and government. And we go through 4 different sessions, if you will. We talk about the foundation of American liberty, some of which you heard this morning already. And then we go into navigating the emotions in a discussion, the art of conversation. How do you present an effective argument to the person you're talking to in a civil, respectful manner that makes sense to them? You know, that you feel confident to go out and defend these principles. And then, of course, developing a network of wise counsel. That's something that I don't see anybody teaching at all. And that involves not just people who are getting involved in politics and government, but those who want to get involved in anything they're doing, whether it's business, church, family, you name it. It's important that not just as leaders, but as adults, that we are surrounding ourselves with counsel that is going to build us up and guide us, right? And show us the way in a sense. So we can actually move forward and be successful and be in the best version of ourselves that we can be in Christ Jesus. Right? And I think that's really important. Every leader should know that. How many of you are maybe friends with a public official or public leader on Facebook? Okay. So if you live in New Hampshire or are very well connected in New Hampshire, you'll find yourself befriending half of the state house. Because state representatives are a dime a dozen there, and it's so unique from any other state. Because when I meet people from other states like Florida or Texas, they say, "Yeah, I was a state rep." They go, "Oh, what? Are you? Wow, that's impressive." It's in a sense it is. It's a humbling thing, but I'm like, it's not as impressive as you might think because a lot of people run, you know, and it's a lot easier to run and get elected there, which is cool. I like that. I think that's really neat because it gives everybody the ability to be able to represent their community, even if you're not making much money or if you're a multi-millionaire. So that's really cool.
In New Hampshire, they pay you like a ham sandwich for your term, right?
I would like a ham sandwich, but I don't even get that. No, it's $100 a year before taxes. And yeah, real
And
good.
do you get free parking?
Yep, free parking. We get a
Alright.
transponder, and we get a discount on certain hotels in the state capital. But I never utilized that, so that was okay. I didn't live far away, so I always went back home. But it was a humbling experience. But one thing that I decided to do when I ran for public office and got involved, I wanted to go back and say, these are the principles that need to be defended. Natural rights, our God-given rights, and what does that even look like? And that's why I put together the Patriot initiative. We go around the region and we put on these programs that we offer, and in hopes to inspire and empower statesmen to rise up and run for public office. That's key. And we want to see young people do this all over the place. So that's our goal and that's our aim. And as I'm going around talking with everybody, it doesn't matter, all age groups, one thing that I'm always hitting is this concept of natural rights. And one thing that I've explained at our Second Amendment forum that we held several months ago at a high school, there's this concept, particularly when it comes to self-defense, because the Second Amendment is representative as a right, correct? The language is representative of our right to self-preservation and self-defense. That's what it's all about. and we're allowed to have whatever means necessary to defend ourselves. In this case, technology has increased, so now we have guns. Yay, guns! I love guns.
Me too.
Yes, and it's so much fun. So, one question that came up, or it wasn't even a question, it was more of a statement. People would say, these state representatives in DC, they're going to take your rights away. I'm very critical of language. No one can take your natural rights away.
Only in
So-
gender.
Right. So when they say they're going to take your rights away, what they're saying is they're going to oppress you and they're going to make it harder for you to express your right. Well, that's what they need to say, because what it sounds like they're saying is when they pass this law, your gun in your safe is just going to go evaporate and disappear. And all of a sudden, you're going to, like, the laws of physics are going to bound your hands where you can't fight back. Nope, that doesn't happen. That's not the way laws of physics work, right? Your guns don't disappear. You're not magically bound by a law because a bunch of men passed it. All it means is now they're saying we're going to give the federal government, or any state government for that matter, to confiscate your firearms or throw you in jail, or perhaps even show up at your front doorstep like they used to do 250 years ago and shoot you, or threaten to shoot you. And that's quickly coming. And so, where we're at now, this is why I explain to people, I say, you need to understand where we're at in culture, because you have to prepare for what might come. You know, Barack Obama, you need to reject these voices that tyranny is always around the corner. Well, it is. I mean, that you always have to be open to that. And that goes for anything. The First Amendment, freedom of consciousness, you have the freedom to freely think. No one can take that away from you. No one can take away your intellectual property. There's legal bounds around it when you present it verbally, right, and you patent an idea and whatnot, but no one can take your right to think away. So these are the sort of things we explain to young people, and so it makes them think a little bit more. We talk about natural law. And again, this goes right back to the Bill of Rights. What is natural law? How does it work? And we bring in experts in the field that talk about this. And we sort of explain this in our constitutional leadership training. So I think it's really important, though, and then this is why you're all here this morning. I think it's very important for us all to understand what we're up against. But also to be encouraged and know that there are a lot of young people out there. I say particularly young people because I know that a lot of those with more life experience, that's my really roundabout way of saying the elder. Yeah, right? It sounds great.
Speak up, not me.
It's great, right? Those with more life experience are often concerned that there are not a lot of young people, especially when you're watching the media, right? And all you see are the media giving socialists and communists this outlet to present their opinion. I see them all the time, even on Fox News, and all these media outlets where they're saying, well, look what this person's saying. And I said, we're so dumbed down as a culture, and so we live in an educational poverty mindset, if you will, right? That I'm almost tired of hearing from the socialists and communists. Yeah, we know they exist. Like, I don't want to hear from them anymore. I want to hear from people who have an idea and a concept that's going to launch us forward into prosperity as a nation and as a people and a culture. That's what I want to hear. I get it. We're in the problem we are because we've given too much credence to those who are socialist and communist. And what I say in general is a totalitarian ideology. That really wraps up everything. So I don't have to sit there and label the 50 million different ideologies that are all separately totalitarian. Just go, yep, oh, you're a totalitarian mindset. That's great. No, it's really not. And we explain that to people. So I want to leave you with some encouragement. There are organizations like ours out there that are presenting this information. We do have a vision to move forward and capture the heart and the mind of these youth. And we're doing just that. And it's great. We have a team. In fact, we actually have a team that we were connected with by, thank you, Hal, by the way. We really appreciate that. J.O. Diallo, who is the co-founder of the Weather Channel, and he is a part of our team now going around giving presentations on climate change and actually offering the opposition to that counterculture to what's going on right now. Because currently, I don't know if you've been watching the Democratic debates. I know they're either really annoying or really enlightening in some ways. It's a balance. But In the first one, they actually said at the very end, I think there were, was it 11 or 12 candidates on stage?
Too many.
And they went down the line, they said, what is the most important issue to you?
Yeah.
And almost every one of them, minus 2, said climate change. And that was literally just 3 months ago when they said that. Nothing's changed at all. I mean, they're all talking about it. So climate change has become the fundamental ideology to go after what? Property.
Yes.
That's what it always is. It's always going back after property. And that's one thing John Locke talks about in his treatise on government, right? And this is what the founding fathers understood, they believed in. John Locke believed government exists to protect 3 things and only 3 things: life, liberty, and property. Of course, Jefferson changed the language a little bit in the Declaration of Independence and said the pursuit of happiness. And by the way, this kind of goes to a point that I have always explained to people. When it comes to having a discussion, there's no problem with having a discussion on changing a document. Like the Constitution, it's left open. The founders understood that the technology would increase in advance, and so there are things we can do to change the document or make it more clear, and that's fine. But you have to have a conversation about that. Oftentimes, conversations get shut down, and sometimes for a good reason, sometimes for a bad reason, but it's important to have those discussions. I'm not suggesting we change the Constitution, by the way. I'm simply saying that it's important to have these discussions, and when socialists and communists come out, they say, oh, we want all this done and changed. They're throwing everything away that our founders built and used to sustain this country. So with that being said, thank you for your time, and I hope that you're all encouraged knowing that there are men and women out there fighting like yourself. You are fighting, and I know you are because you're here right now. And that's good.
That's awesome.
All right, folks, well, I want to thank you for coming, and if you're watching this on YouTube or on Facebook, we do encourage you to support groups like the Patriot Initiative. Catherine White has her Constitution Decoded classes in Greater Boston, and we need to replicate people like Catherine White and people like Josh. We also encourage you to, also Patrick Humphreys, who's got the Greater Boston Tea Party groups. And
Yes.
so they're on Facebook. You don't have a website, do you?
No.
Okay. But they meet twice a month, different parts of the, and we need to get more people involved. And also encourage you to help with Camp Constitution. We actually have a group of young people that are meeting almost every week online. It's called the Agenda 21 Challenge. And 2 of the young men from Michigan who participate with our camp have started their own blog, not blog, blog. And they're going to be releasing that in January. Sort of our answer to Greta.
Awesome.
They actually wrote an open letter to Greta. Is that right? Letter to Greta. To get Grenada, motherfucker. Tell me, get a song. I get a song coming on here. So, we actually invited her to come to our camp, right? Because I did a search for open letters to Greta. There's like 1 million of them. Everyone's writing an open letter, so I don't think she really had time to read it. Although one of our instructors was in Spain, it may still be there, but they had another UN conference on the horrible horrors of climate, and she got in front of Greta, got some of her pictures of her and spoke to her mom. So maybe, it's not likely that Greta's going to come to Camp Constitution, but the problem is, if they had a Camp Constitution in Sweden and she attended that place, maybe she wouldn't be such a socialist that she is.
Right.
Anyway, so we encourage you to visit our website, go to our YouTube channel, share these great videos that we do, and also participate with Camp Constitution. Our annual camp is coming up in July 19th to the 24th in beautiful Plainfield, New Hampshire, just a little south of Lebanon. Lovely campground. And we already have Lord Monckton and Professor Willie Soon, who's one of the top climate scientists in the world. I think Josh would be, and Catherine White. So we do have, I've got a couple of, Alex Newman will be there for the week too. Alex Newman, who was the author, co-author of Crimes of
We're going to the
Educators.
home of the Patriot artist,
And we are
Augustus
going
St.
to
Gaudens,
take
who
that's
designed
correct.
this coin.
We're taking a field trip, and it's only about 15 minutes drive from our camp. So with that, I want to thank you, and
Just
I forgot, Second Amendment sisters. How dare I do that? Yes.
Say a few words.
thank you.
Go ahead.
No, I just had a question. Camp Constitution is for, it's not just for kids, it's for the whole family,
It's a family camp, yes.
It's a
That's one
family
thing
camp.
in the marketing world. Some people, when they think of a camp, they think it's either for kids, or it's intense in the woods, or it's for old people, or young people, or what have you, but it's a family camp.
Right.
But we also have unaccompanied minors, and even adults who help out, so they don't have to have a family with you necessarily. And again, it's coming up July 19th to the 24th, and our website is campconstitution.net. So with that, have a great Bill of Rights Day, which is actually tomorrow, the 15th of December, right? Okay, God bless, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.